Hello, everyone. Welcome to the public forum, Review and Vision of Judicial Independence, the Taijiman Case. I'm your host today, Eileen.
And I'm your host today, Bobby.
So today is Taiwan's Judicial Day, and what makes it particularly special is it's just in 2 days we'll have the 16th presidential and legislative election in Taiwan. There's a lot of talk about the need for tax and law reforms. People are waiting for our new leaders to actually take actions on it. However, today the Judicial Yuan holds a seminar with the theme Application of Generative AI in Legal Practice and its Challenge to Human Rights, Vulnerable Population, and Gender Issues. We
Yeah,
think,
I believe
yeah,
so. Yeah, I believe that Taiwan should really stop window dressing and really address the issues internally. The problems are there's so many laying around and waiting to be solved. So I believe Taiwan's government should look internally while also following on this generation's AI.
yes, whether it's about AI, the new techniques, or actually about the law, the human rights are the most important topic. But on January 9th, a judicial festival forum was organized by the several NGO groups. They are talking about the needs of the change and about the Taijiman case. So now let's take a look at the speech from Dr. Hong Daozi, the president of Full Power and the general of Taijiman.
Professor Barker, Dr. Introvine, esteemed scholars, ladies and gentlemen, good day and Happy New Year. I would like to thank Eileen and Massimo, two internationally renowned sociologists, for joining us. It's an honor to have friends from afar who are concerned about the development of human rights and freedom of religion or belief in Taiwan. Your efforts are highly appreciated. I wish to express my admiration to the scholars and experts present here, who have long been committed to addressing Taiwan's unjust systems, devoting their energy, and taking practical actions. Your selfless sharing of academic insights, practical experiences, and recommendations is a force for societal enlightenment and serves as a catalyst for urging the government to accelerate reforms, leading our nation towards a direction that benefits both the nation and its people. As the ancient saying goes, man follows the earth follows the heavens follow the Tao, and the Tao follows what is natural. In the vast universe, there are no written rules governing its operation, yet it possesses infinite power, creating a natural balance for billions of creatures. When humanity moves from authoritarianism to democracy and the rule of law, laws become the product of human society. By facing natural law with conscience and enforcing the law with justice, fairness, legality, and reasonableness, the scales of justice can achieve a balance. As times change, laws must evolve and align with reason, morality, and current societal conditions. Law enforcers must consider these factors within the existing governmental system and operations, prioritizing human rights protection and adding understanding to avoid becoming legal artisans who tolerate evil laws, leading to tragic consequences of legal killings. Austrian sociologist E. Ehrlich, born in the 19th century, observed from his long-term studies that there is no guarantee of justice except the personality of the judge. Therefore, many countries' constitutions explicitly state judges should adjudicate independently, fairly, and justly, based on the Constitution and laws, guided by their conscience, without any interference. Only when the law enforcers use their conscience as the pivot of the scales can there be balance on both sides of the scale. As emphasized in Article 7 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. However, throughout human history, violations of human rights have often stemmed from government abuse of power. Those in power, driven by their own greed for authority, fame, and profit, or lacking the courage to make decisions that benefit the people, have allowed officials to abuse their power unlawfully. Even worse, they use the judiciary and tax laws as tools for discrimination and persecution, including depriving people of personal freedom, religious beliefs, and freedom of thought, thereby infringing on people's property rights, right to life, or right to subsistence. The extent and scope of damage inflicted on the people and society through the abuse of public power are no less destructive than bloody wars and torture. The Taijimen 1219 incident is a classic example of the state's abuse of the judiciary and tax laws to persecute human rights. Taijimen Shifu and Dizi have endured over a quarter century of adversity, but being human, discerning right from wrong, is a lifelong learning process. Holding steadfast to the truth and not compromising with falsehoods is a lifelong practice. Effort brings hope, and the only questions are whether there is sincere effort and whether one can hold one's head high. Paving the way for human rights and peace is a difficult path, fraught with obstacles. Thank you for your steadfast companionship on this journey. Our persistence in truth will eventually bring hope. Laws are based on nature. Statutes follow the laws of heaven, and laws follow humanity. They are born from the principles of heaven, and conscience is the only arbiter between heaven and earth, the final judgment of natural law, and the passport to heaven. Human rights supreme, people-oriented, law-guided, and conscience-centered are the heart and key of legislation and law enforcement. Government agencies should administer by conscience, according to the law, to alleviate people's suffering and fulfill the law's original intent of admonishing transgressions, encouraging goodness, maintaining social order, and preserving justice. From top to bottom, the country can implement human rights governance through a sound legal environment, enabling people to live in peace and prosperity, and the nation to enjoy long-term stability. Today, whether nations or individuals, we all face more variables and challenges. Only by calmly listening to the call of conscience and rediscovering ourselves can we truly awaken our conscience and bravely and honestly correct mistakes. In the face of public power's infringement on human rights, every global citizen must have the courage to stand up for justice, collectively supervise public power, and do what is necessary, which is the collective awakening of the world citizen's conscience. On the eve of Taiwan's Judicial Day, reflecting on the International Covenant on Human Rights implemented in many countries globally, it's evident that there is still much room for improvement in enforcing various human rights protections on this land. Judicial power is granted by the people and should be exercised with caution to maintain fairness and justice. serving as the last line of defense for justice. We earnestly hope that the voices of justice, loud and clear, will awaken the conscience of those in power, implement the protection of human rights and religious freedom, return to acting with conscience, and infuse new life into judicial reform, ultimately regaining the trust of the people. May wrongful cases cease to exist, truly respecting human rights and maintaining peace, so that everyone may share in happiness and joy. Though the journey is long, with sincere hearts and steadfast resolve, conscience is key. The responsibility is great and the path long. Wishing everyone health, peace, and joy. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
I think it's very touching since such a group and lots of victims that have come through such a journey over 25 years, but they're still talking about conscience and love. So in this speech, you understand that the law is actually within us. It's not just the judicial law system. It's actually within heaven, earth, and human, and we should maintain the balance by following our conscience that will have a deep understanding of human rights. And with our conscience that we understand we could stand out and speak out for justice, and everyone has the courage to help those victims and then help ourselves.
Yeah, I truly thank Dr. Hong for his speech, because it is so important to remember for us all that the original intent of law is to protect people, not use it in a way to make things and matters difficult and unjust. For a lot of officials, as we can see in Taiwan, use the law to manipulate and kidnap people. And there's so many victims in Taiwan that's not shown on the news. So that is why Dr. Hong urges us all to look into our heart and use conscience as a key to see what is right, what is wrong. And that is also especially very important for a judge, because they have that power to help the people, and they should use that power to use it wisely. So today we have several panelists strongly urging the candidate to redress the famous Taijimen case, symbolizing Taiwan's judiciary's true independence and the government's unwavering commitment to justice. And as we move on, we have the great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who is Professor Eileen Barker. She is Professor Emeritus at the London School of Economics, a renowned sociologist of religion and the leading authority on new religious movements. Her works has significantly contributed to our understanding of religious freedom in various legal and social contexts. She was a key speaker with Dr. Massimo Introvini on the 2024 Judicial Day Forum, where many Taiwanese scholars have joined there. Today, she brings us her insights into the difference between nations in upholding these liberties. So let's take a look at Eileen Barker's video.
Thank you very much. I feel very honored to be here today. Taiwan is really one of my favorite countries, and I'm always very happy to be here. I'm grateful also to Dr. Hong for inviting me, and to all his DC who have made the last few days very interesting for me. And I hope I shall go on visiting Taiwan for a long time. I may not have a long time, but I still hope. I call my paper When Human Rights Become Human Wrongs. The vast majority of states around the world are signatories of international declarations on the subject of universal human rights. And nearly all of these pay lip service to the concept of freedom of religion. However, okay. Right, can you hear me now? Good. Where was I? And nearly all of these pay lip service to the concept of freedom of religion. However, the ways in which the concept of human rights is understood and implemented differ enormously. And I would suggest that there are few, if indeed any, states in which the possibility exists for all individuals and/or all religions to be able to manifest their beliefs with some sort of without some sort of prejudicial interference from the very states that have signed such declarations or from its agents. I am not a lawyer, but a sociologist of religion who has been studying minority religions and spiritual and philosophical groups and social reactions to such movements for over half a century. It has become clear to me that there are numerous ways in which the legal philosophies of states can be distinguished, and one classificatory distinction could be between what I want to call before states and after states. Before states have a policy of enacting laws so that their citizens will be protected from potential harms by a minority movement, before such harm has taken place. After states, on the other hand, allow citizens to act relatively freely, but apply a universally applicable law about, for example, murder, theft, fraud, or child abuse, only after the law has been broken. In other words, before states have laws that prevent either some or all minority religions from manifesting their religion in a number of ways, or possibly altogether. Conversely, after states are unlikely to have any laws about particular religions or their members that don't apply to the general population. It is only after a religion and/or its members are proved guilty in law of breaking a general law that any restrictions or punishments will be imposed on them. They are, in other words, assumed innocent until proved guilty. Of course, these two types, before and after states, rarely, if ever, apply unambiguously in reality. Most states will be more or less before or after in their policies. However, it's possible to suggest that democracies are more likely to be after states than either theocracies or communist or socialist states, which are more likely to be before states. Examples of democratic countries, such as those of North America, Northern Europe, Australia, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, would seem, at least prima facie, to be more likely to be after states, while North Korea, mainland China, Vietnam, Russia, and Iran are more likely to be before states. But almost as soon as we make this distinction, we start to run into difficulties. France, for example, is undoubtedly a democracy, but it has passed a number of laws that might seem to place it firmly in the before category. Interestingly, given the situation in which Taiji Men has found itself, the French courts claimed that money donated to Jehovah's Witnesses was not eligible for tax exemption because it was not a real religion, but a cult. Eventually, however, the European Court of Human Rights overruled the French parliamentary decision, and the witnesses were repaid all of the taxes that they had been forced to pay. Indeed, once one starts to look at actual practices, we can see that there are a number of ways in which the law can be misused or circumvented by what are apparently after-states in order to curtail the free practice of certain religions, or at least make it difficult for them to realize their constitutionally guaranteed legal rights and freedoms. England, which is clearly a democracy, and according to its laws, fairly obviously an after-state, does have an established church, the Church of England, but it's unnecessary for other religions to register. All are free to practice in whatever way they wish, or not to practice any religion at all. However, if religions want to gain certain tax exemptions, then they have to register as a charity, though this is entirely voluntary, and some movements prefer not to apply for charitable status. Until fairly recently, it was assumed that all religions could qualify as a charity merely by being a religion. But then some unpopular religions, and the Church of Scientology as an example, were declared to be not real religion and were therefore denied charitable status. Even more recently, charity law has been changed so that a religion not only has to prove that it is a real religion, but also that it is of public benefit. The Plymouth Brethren Christian Church was deemed not to be of public benefit, although it was not accused of having committed any crime. However, a few years later, it was able to convince the charity commissioners that it did not cruelly ostracize their members from former members of their own families. Staying in the UK, at the time of what are referred to as the Troubles in Northern Ireland, several movements, such as the Irish Republican Army, were banned as terrorist organizations. But since then, a number of religious organizations have been banned, mainly Islamic jihadist groups such as ISIS or the Mujahideen, but also some right-wing Christian movements. In Lithuania and several other countries, there are various levels of recognition. All religions can practice freely, but according to the length of time they have operated in a country and or the number of members that they have, they will have more or fewer benefits, such as tax relief, access to public media, or being able to teach their religion in the schools. One way in which rights of religions can be denied is by labeling them in a certain way. Some are denied consideration as a religion because some other description takes precedence over that of religious. In mainland China, for example, some organizations are labeled Xizhao, which I gather really means heterodox teachings, but is often translated as dangerous cults. This means they cannot be regarded as a freedom because they are considered criminal organizations just because of the label and are subject to imprisonment and other punishments. In Russia, certain texts, such as the literature produced by the Jehovah's Witnesses or written by the Islamic scholar Said Nursi, are considered extremist because, for example, the Jehovah's Witnesses claim that they are the true religion, so everyone reading such literature is subject to criminal proceedings. But one might ask, which religion claims it is not the true religion? Yet another way in which the religious freedoms may be denied, despite their legal rights, is by the administrators of justice, simply not following the law. In the United States and Western European democracies in the 1970s and 80s, there were literally hundreds of cases of deprogramming, that is, illegally kidnapping converts to unpopular religions and holding them against their will until they managed to escape or convince their captors that they had renounced their faith. In such cases, the religions might complain to the authorities, or to the person him or herself might manage to contact the police. But frequently, the police just turned a blind eye and might even collaborate with the deprogrammers in keeping the captor from returning to his or her religion. In one case in the United Kingdom, the Unification Church brought a case of habeas corpus in an attempt to set one of their members release one of their members from deprogrammers. But the judge just ruled that this 28-year-old woman was being held because her parents were concerned about her belonging to a dangerous cult, such as the so-called Moonies. And they, the parents, were good people who were clearly doing the best for their daughter. Consequently, the daughter was held for a month or more in a remote part of France, having at times been threatened at gunpoint. Eventually, she was able to return to her church, but it took some time to repair her relationship with her parents. The deprogrammers, who, together with the media and the so-called anti-cult movement, had convinced the parents to spend thousands of pounds on her deprogramming, were able to walk free with a considerable sum of money in their bank accounts. From what I understand of the case of Taiji men, it would seem that this is a situation in which an organization has been denied what is its legal rights by part of the apparatus of the very government that has declared its rights are being abused. Dr. Hong has been detained without justification, as clearly stated by a Supreme Court decision. And the movement has had tax bills imposed and land confiscated by the tax authorities for reasons that other sections of the government have declared illegal. And yet, Taiwan is a democracy, which is in many ways far more clearly an after state than many other countries in the region or indeed throughout the world. In other words, it would seem clear that Taiwan is falling below its own standards as far as the Taiji men case is concerned. This is, to say the very least, a shameful situation so far as the rule of law and the rights of not only Dr. Hong and Taiji Men's DC, but also of Taiwan itself. The rule of law is believed by most people to be a good thing, but that is only the case if the laws are just and fair, and if they are followed honestly by legislators and implementers of the law, rather than being perverted for perverse motives. I very much hope that Taiwan will, after all these years, put its legal house in order and remedy what seems a most unfortunate anomaly when the tax officials can ignore the state's own pronouncements. Thank you.
Wow. We thank Professor Barker for her profound insights into the complexities of global religious freedom, especially the balance between before state and after state philosophies, just like what she said. Professor Barker's reflection on the Taijiman case has shown the challenges faced by minority groups in asserting their rights. Yes. So we will have Dr. Massimo Introvigne, a distinguished scholar and the founder of the Center of Studies on New Religions, editor-in-chief for the Better Winner magazine. With his expertise, Dr. Massimo Introvigne will build upon our understanding of the historical and contemporary implication of judicial independence. So, Dr. Massimo.
Thank you, Dr. Hong, distinguished guests and colleagues, and in honor of Eileen Barker, I will mostly talk about Scotland. Of course, we celebrate an event relevant for Taiwan, the Judicial Day, which commemorates the fateful day of January 11, 1943, when in Chongqing, Chiang Kai-shek and the United States representatives agreed to take over the immunity guaranteed to British and American citizens which were not subject to the Chinese system of law, but were judged by their consul, and this anomaly was removed, which is still remembered in Taiwan as an important day asserting the full independence of the Chinese or Republic of China's legal system. It's not in my written paper, but I always add that to understand what the system was for Europeans and for opera lovers, it's easy to reflect that the same system existed in Japan, and its consequences are depicted in Puccini's opera Madame Butterfly, where an American Navy officers cannot be compelled to behave towards a Japanese woman by Japanese courts because he was only subject to the jurisdiction of the American consul. And the same system existed in China, and the Judicial Day commemorates its disposal or end on January 11, 1943. And traditionally, Judicial Day in Taiwan is a day to reflect on the concept of the rule of law. And here is where Scotland enters into the picture. Because the formula rule of law, the idea existed before. We can go back to Aristotle's Book of the Laws, but the words rule of law were first used in 1644 within the context of a religious freedom controversy. The first to pen the words rule of law was certain Samuel Rutherford, who happened to be a minister in the Church of Scotland. And Scotland had and still has his own Presbyterian church called the Kirk, with a Calvinist theology, which is very different from the Anglican doctrine and organization of the Church of England. And what happened is King Charles I, not the King Charles ruling now, wanted to merge the Church of Scotland and the Church of England. What he really wanted to do was to better control religion. And the merger was quite unequal in the sense that it wanted the Church of Scotland to adopt the theology and organization of the Church of England, thus losing its independence and distinctive features. So this project, not surprisingly by King Charles, generated widespread opposition in Scotland. In 1638, something called the National Covenant was signed to defend the freedom of the Kirk, to define its own theology and organization, and in time the confrontation escalated from theologically to military and inaugurated a time of civil wars in the United Kingdom. A prominent exponent of the Scottish National League, Rutherford coined the expression rule of law against King Charles' motto Rex Lex, which meant in Latin the king is the law, and he claimed that should be replaced by a different motto, Lex Rex, meaning that the real king of the United Kingdom is not a person, but it's the law. And even King Charles should be subject to the law like everybody else. Although the rule of law was a very beautiful formula, like many other great human ideas, such as democracy and freedom, it was born under a cloud and with certain ambiguity. While Rutherford advocated religious liberty for his own Kirk, the Church of Scotland, he was not prepared to grant it to other religions, particularly to Roman Catholics. He even wrote a book called A Free Disputation Against the Pretended Liberty of Conscience, which became quite notorious as an apology for the persecution of Catholics and other groups Rutherford regarded as heretics. In other words, Rutherford wanted the rule of law, but said that some religious groups should be excluded from the rule of law because they were dangerous heresies. Today we will call them cults. So since the birth of the formula rule of law, there has been a tension between its theory and its practice. And there was always the temptation of excluding some groups, such as the Roman Catholics at that time, from its scope. Also, how the rule of law was applied in practice depended on local authorities and bureaucrats. Today, we acknowledge our debt to Rutherford for its beautiful formula, rule of law, but we generally disagree with his idea that heretics should not benefit from it. We understand that one man's heresy is another man's truth, and generally we agree that disputes between religions should not be decided by the state. The rule of law should protect everybody, or it protects nobody. We also know that instituting an independent judiciary in China in 1943 did not, and exporting it to Taiwan when Chiang Kai-shek moved to Taiwan, did not really guarantee the respect of the rule of law. Those who disagreed from the government were persecuted during the White Terror and the martial law periods. And even after the martial law was lifted in 1987, the rule of law was not totally and immediately guaranteed, nor was freedom of religion and belief, as evidenced by the crackdown in 1996 on a religious group that had not supported the Kuomintang ruling party in that year's presidential election, including Taijimen. What's more, even after 1996, attacks and other forms of harassment of spiritual minorities continued, as demonstrated by the fact that the Taijimen case, as we heard before, has not been solved to this very day. As we reflect on Taiwan's Judicial Day coming in 2 days from now, on the rule of law, we remember that since the expression rule of law was coined in the 17th century, it was connected with freedom of religion or belief, although this idea was not fully developed at the time. And today we should repeat and affirm that there is no rule of law without respect for religious and spiritual minorities. While it is surely appreciable that no new major case of violation of freedom of religion or belief has emerged in Taiwan in the last few years, this is not enough to conclude that the rule of law and religious liberty are fully respected. Transitional justice dictates that all the cases should be rectified too. It's not enough that there are no new cases, you should also solve the old cases. Let me conclude by saying that it is not too late and it will never be too early to restore justice for Taijimen. Thank you.
Well, we thank Dr. Intervenia very much. Through historical journey of judicial independence, Dr. Intervenia reminded us of the continuous struggle for justice and fairness. Also a portrayal of the complexity surrounding the Taijimen case sheds light on the often challenging path towards the true judicial equity and freedom. And now, we welcome our next speaker, Ms. Claire Huang, a dedicated Taijimen Dizi and a graduate student at Harvard University. Her experience offers a heartfelt perspective on the human element within our legal system, adding depth to our understanding of the broader implication of the Taijimen case. So, Ms. Claire Huang, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bobby. Hello, everyone. Good evening. And my name is Claire, and I'm now a Taijimen Dizi and also a graduate student at Harvard University. And I'm really honored to be here and share my experiences with all of you. Dr. Hong Daozi, my shifu, teaches us that distinguishing between good and bad, right and wrong, truth and falsehood are the wisdom of life. When faced with imbalances and bad hearts, it is crucial to use a calm mind to see the truth clearly, and also to employ balanced wisdom to resolve conflicts, and practice a broad-minded approach to promote peace and spread the energy of love and peace. And last Sunday, Dr. Hong, Professor Barker, and Professor Intervenia visited the Swiss villa in Xizhi, New Taipei City. And brothers and sisters and I were lucky enough to participate in this event. In the Swiss villa, it was originally planned as a holy place for all deeds to gather and practice. However, it is now in a state of irreparable ruins, and this place was once a place with dreams and meditation for our Shifu and all of us deeds. But now, when I went there, it makes me feel really sad. For me, Taijimen is not only a place to practice, but also an important part of my life. Dr. Hong helped me understand the importance of conscience, both individually and in the societal context. He also reminded me that in my academic career and interactions with others, I should, as my Sifu taught us, regard conscience as an inner compass. And only by doing so can I live up to the expectation of both others and myself. So when I walked through the once majestic buildings of Swiss mountain villa, they were now all ruined. Every broken brick seemed to tell the story of the past glory that has turned into the present desolation. This deep sense of helplessness and disappointment makes us feel that it is not only the loss of the building, but also the loss of a culture and a period of history. And also it is a scar of public power persecuting the people. However, it was in the sorrow that I understand that existence of the injustice side of Taijimen 1219 incident is a symbol of turning sorrow into strength. I hope that there will be no more cases of national violent persecution of human rights in the future. And in true democracy and true freedom, everyone can enjoy the protection of human rights and everyone can receive fairness and justice. This is not only a symbol of rebirth and hope. The Swiss mountain villa is also a concrete manifestation of Shifu's spirit of struggle with us to uphold the truth and seek justice for all of the people in Taiwan. So I would like to tell you more about myself. I joined Taijimen at the age of 7, and for the past 18 years, I've been deeply influenced by the teachings and guidance of conscience. Taijimen has entered its injustice accusation the 28th year, during which the National Tax Bureau attempted to negotiate and suggested paying a sum of money to expedite the resolution of the case. However, my Shifu remained unmoved by these attempts. He told me, throughout history, there have been many who embark on the path of self-cultivation, but few who have exist and consist to the end. And the key lies in the cultivator's fearlessness of suffering, unwavering commitment to discerning right from wrong in their pursuit of truth. This is what my Shifu taught me. So for the past years, Shifu has himself upheld the 1,000-year-old cultural heritage of the ancient Qigong martial arts tradition in our practice. The crucial point is that the criminal court ruled in the third trial that Taijimen was not guilty and did not owe taxes, and then received compensation from the state for wrongful imprisonment and cleared our name. This is the truth that should not be distorted. Our steadfast belief is that fairness and justice should prevail in the face of adversity and persecution. Holding steadfast to one's beliefs and values, unwavering with defending the spirit of conscience, deeply moved me. And it also motivated me to actively participate in a campaign, loudly calling on society to pay attention to the injustice with the law. And I also go to domestic and international forums where I share the significance of the Taijimen case with other societal organizations and individuals. So here, I would like to take this opportunity to call for again the respect of values such as conscience and judicial justice. The Taijiman case is not just an isolated case, but also reflects the urgency of judicial reform, and it is especially important in today's forum as we're calling for the judicial justice. First, the promotion path of Hou Kuanren. He is the prosecutor in Taijiman case. It is really worrying for his promotion. Professor Wu Jingqing from the law department of Zhenli University pointed out that this is not just a case. Taijiman case is a reflection on the entire judicial system. And Hou Kuanren is a prosecutor who wrote absurd stories in the indictment and was found guilty of 8 major violations after investigation by the control yuan. However, due to the systematic corruption of official protection, Hou Kuanren not only received no punishment, but was even promoted to the deputy director of Agency Against Corruption. And now he has also been promoted again to director of the Institute of Forensic Medicine of the Ministry of Justice. If he serves as the dean of the Academy of Forensic Science and formulate judicial science ethics in the future, this will undoubtedly be a huge test for the entire judicial system. And also, will you be very worrying for the judicial system? Like this kind of leader doing all the judicial system and doing all the science ethics in the Taiwanese government. So we need a judicial environment that can avoid this from happening again. Also, Mr. Cai Weijie, the head of Xinjie County and then Administration Office, also emphasized the principle of tax consistency when he mentioned the issue of the Taijiman case. In this case, it clearly shows that the tax collection agency failed to admit its mistakes, and its handling of the errors were even more dissatisfactory. This reflects that the government should honestly face its mistake and give the people a chance to make corrections. And this is not just a matter of a single case, which is the Taijiman case, but also a social issue related to whether the government can have the courage to reform and admit its mistake. So for all what I've shared and for an important time next week, I would like to call for that we need a leader who can truly push for judicial reform. Before the upcoming presidential election in Taiwan this Saturday, I would like to call on the 3 presidential candidates to take a fair and transparent stance, actively examine the shortcomings in the judicial system, and while promoting reforms, I hope that you can sincerely admit mistakes in the past and correct them with practical actions. This is not only fair treatment for Taijiman, but also a responsibility to all us Taiwanese people, no matter you're online or you're offline. We look forward to a leader who can make real achievements in judicial reform and a president who can make Taiwan's judicial system more complete. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Ms. Claire, and for your heartfelt words. Yeah, hearing that prosecutor Hou Kuanren, knowing that he is still out there and roaming around in Taiwan, even with promotions, that's something very worrying. So, yes, the law must do something, must be fixed in order to keep these people accountable. They must hold responsibility for their actions. And yes, hearing about your commitment to conscience and your efforts to seek truth and justice in the Taijiman case, it is a powerful reminder of the impact of legal decisions on individuals' lives. So continuing with this deeply personal narrative, we now welcome Ms. Ying Liu, a Taijiman 弟子 and a biotech executive in the Netherlands. Ms. Ng brings her own unique perspective, shaped by her experience both in Taiwan and abroad. So the floor is yours, Ms. Ng.
Hi everyone, I am Ying, a 太极门弟子 and the general manager of a biotech company in the Netherlands. I was born and raised in Taiwan and have been living in the Netherlands for 18 years. Today, I would like to talk about a topic that has profoundly impacted me personally and many people in Taiwan. That is Taiwan's judicial independence and justice. Despite Taiwan abolishing extraterritoriality after signing equal treaties with countries like the UK and the US, has Taiwan's judiciary truly achieved an impartial and independent status, capable of genuinely balancing other governmental powers and upholding justice and human rights? 太极门 case sheds light on this issue. This case has been ongoing for 27 years and is now entering its 28th year, still without resolution. As a 太极门弟子, this has had a profound impact on me personally. Last Sunday, just like Claire, I visited Swiss Mountain Villa in Xizhi, New Taipei City, with Dr. Hong, Professor Eileen, and Dr. Massimo, along with some other 弟子. There stands the injustice site of 太极门 December 19 incident, a place of great significance for us. On December 19, 1996, the then prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren wrongfully and abusively prosecuted Dr. Hong and his wife on groundless charges like raising goblins. The National Taxation Bureau, without conducting its own investigation or waiting for a judicial verdict to confirm the nature of the income, issued illegal tax bills in an attempt to disband 太极门. Swiss Mountain Villa was frozen by the prosecutor and banned from disposal by the National Taxation Bureau. In 2007, the Supreme Court's Criminal Division ruled 太极门 innocent of any crime, tax evasion, or violation of the Tax Collection Act. In 2018, the Supreme Administrative Court ruled in favor of 太极门. Finally, in 2020, the Taiwanese government returned Swiss Mountain Villa to 太极门. But after 27 years, 5 months and 7 days of illegal seizure, this place, which was intended for an academy, had become ruins. Walking towards Swiss Mountain Villa, listening to Shifu recounting its past, I envisioned the rare ski slopes, ice rinks, and horse tracks there, and even the famous filming location of Chong Yao's TV drama Deep Inside Courtyard. My heart was filled with imagination about that beautiful era. However, this naturally blessed and sacred cultivation site for 太极门师傅 and 弟子 has been abandoned due to the conscienceless and unlawful abuse of power by some governmental officials. As a child, my parents and other 弟子 often came here on weekends to help with indoor repairs and tidy up the courtyard, with the sole intention of making it a place for cultivation and nurturing alongside 师傅 and 师母. Looking at the now irreparable and broken roof tiles, I feel deeply saddened by the thought of how much effort and time of 太极门师傅 and 弟子 has been wasted here, especially thinking about my father, who was also a 太极门弟子 and often helped out at Swiss Mountain Villa. He has passed away, and yet the injustice of 太极门 case remains unresolved, turning Swiss Mountain Villa into ruins. I can't help but think how disappointed and saddened he would be if he saw our country's injustice in law and taxation to such extent. That day, Professor Eileen and Dr. Massimo, along with Dr. Hong, planted a sapling in front of the monument, symbolizing rebirth and hope. This symbolic tree planting represents not only a commemoration of the past, but also a symbol of hope for justice in the future. When the sapling was planted, the winter sun broke through the clouds, warming us with hope, just like how 太子们弟子 have endured over 27 years of injustice without ever giving up on doing the right thing, because we believe in justice and in the power of hope to change our world. I have participated in numerous international forums speaking about 太子们 case in countries like France, Belgium, Lithuania, and the United States. I look forward to the day when I can share the good news of this case being truly resolved. On this Judicial Day, I sincerely wish that everyone, especially the Taiwanese governmental officials, will make decisions with conscience and uphold the rights of the people. I hope the tragedy of Swiss Mountain Via will never be repeated, and that the Taiwanese government will actively redress 太子们 case and stand up for justice for all those who have suffered unjust taxation, ensuring that everyone enjoys their legal and tax rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. In. So Bobby and I were actually also on the site to see the tragedy by ourselves. I think for anyone who actually have been living abroad or come back to see our homeland become like this will be really, really painful. I think Bobby will also have some kind of the same situation here. So there are similar stories to In. There are thousands of the families in Taijumen were actually affected by the case, which means children, women are actually deeply affected and has a really deep affection by this case. And not just in the north of Taiwan, and also in the south, Kaohsiung, there's another injustice site of Taijumen 1219 incident. Now let's take a look at this documentary clip.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's program. On December 19th, 1996, the fabricated Taijumen case called the Law and Tax 228 incident by scholars and experts began. The Control Yuan investigated prosecutor Hou Kuan-ren's handling of the Taijumen case and found he had committed 8 major violations of the law, and the case was sent to the Ministry of Justice for disciplinary action against Hou. This case was chosen as a major human rights protection case in the General Report and the Work of Human Rights Protection of the Control Yuan from 1999 to 2005. It has been confirmed that serious violations of human rights occurred during the case and investigation process. The false Taijumen case should never have existed in the first place, and it should never have resulted in illegal taxation or auctions. The case has lasted for 25 years. For the past quarter century, a world-renowned ancient spiritual group that practices Qigong and martial arts has been harassed, and the matter has yet to be resolved. Let us now listen to their stories.
In 1988, a Taijumen Academy was established in a shopping center in Kaohsiung. It was a good place for disciples in southern Taiwan to practice Qigong, and a sweet home for them.
When I first stepped into this academy, although the place was small, it was full of joy and laughter.
After joining Taijumen, every day after class, I would wait for my parents to take my brother and me to Taijumen. I would practice Qigong with other members. It was a place where we could relieve our stress.
Shifu always leads by example. After leading us to practice Qigong, Shifu would always talk about life philosophy and tell stories. At that time, the academy was always filled with laughter. Some would practice Qigong, while some would chat with one another. Many people wanted to join Taijumen.
I had cancer and was seriously ill. My health started to improve after I practiced Taijimen Qigong for about 3 months. Taijimen is a big family, and everyone here practices Qigong in peace and harmony. Stormy 1996. On December 19, 1996, the Taiwanese government launched a religious crackdown, and Taijimen was caught in the crossfire. Prosecutor Hou Huanden abused his power and illegally prosecuted Taijimen, causing significant damage to our home.
The 12/19 incident was really a big blow to us, and what was reported on TV was not what I saw in Taijimen. Because we're such a good group, our Shifu only teaches us what is good, right, and true.
Prosecutor Ho directed the searches and interrogations of investigators and armed police officers. He also slandered Taijimen by falsely accusing them of raising goblins. Regarding the allegation of raising goblins in the indictment, the control yuan solemnly stated that the prosecutor openly talked about the supernatural in the indictment. This was the first time in Taiwanese judicial history that something like this had happened. It was appalling and absurd, and it had seriously harmed the prestige of the justice system.
Prosecutor Ho's action was illegal, robbed people of their property, and hurt innocent people. It harmed our sweet home and hampered the self-cultivation of many of our brothers and sisters. Every time I think about it, my heart aches.
The prosecutor and police arrested a brother, and he was pale and trembling all over.
Even my family members misunderstood me, and my relatives and friends refused to interact with me.
The indictment and the evidence contradicted each other, according to the Control Yuan's investigation report, and the prosecutors bringing the public prosecution clearly broke the rule of evidence. During the Control Yuan's probe, Prosecutor Ho also stated that he did not actually investigate this matter. This proves that the Taijimen case was fabricated from the beginning. His smear campaign has done a lot of damage to Taijimen Shifu and Dizi. This indictment was both a national and international embarrassment.
It is not due process to accuse a human being in a civilized society of raising goblins. The mere statement of that would cause individuals and should cause individuals to question the sanity of the prosecutor. In any court of law, such an absurd allegation would be thrown out.
I firmly believe that Taijimen is a great place. We must defend it.
The Taijimen case is an unjust case. The fabricated indictment is in violation of evidence law. By law, the case should not have been prosecuted, and the indictment cannot be used as a basis for taxation. However, the criminal court accepted the case, and after thorough investigations and trials spanning 10 years and 3 months, the Supreme Court declared Taijimen not guilty of tax evasion or any other charges on July 13, 2007. It was illegal for the National Taxation Bureau to issue tax bills based on the indictment. When the Supreme Court declared Taijimen not guilty, affirming that it owed no taxes, it reaffirmed that the indictment was completely improper. Therefore, by law, the tax bill issued based on the indictment should have been revoked in accordance with the court decision. However, the NTB ignored the court's decision and continued to issue illegal tax bills to Taijimen.
This case has dragged on for 25 years, spanning several presidencies. Still, no government official came forward to admit their mistakes and accept responsibility.
During the Legislative Yuan's public hearing on June 17, 2010, the Ministry of Finance and the NTB of the Central Area openly agreed to withdraw the enforcement and end the Taijimen unjust tax case within 2 months. But they broke their promise, and the case has yet to be resolved. On August 21, 2020, Taijuman's sacred land in Miaoli was illegally auctioned and confiscated. The Taijuman Academy on Lainan Street, Kaohsiung, was twice seized and banned from being disposed of.
The building was seized for a prolonged period of time. We couldn't maintain or manage it since we didn't have access to it. As a result, all the valuable items were stolen.
Tears welled up in my eyes as I entered the academy, which had been destroyed.
Kenneth Jacobson, professor of law at Temple University in Philadelphia, United States of America, and former advisor to President Bill Clinton, after studying the case for years, pointed out,
I teach my students and I lecture around the world about how important the rule of law is. And there is no and was no application of the rule of law in the Taijuman tax case. I call upon the President of Taiwan, I call upon the leaders of Taiwan to fix the mistakes of the past. As I have said before, to allow errors to continue, to perpetuate mistakes that were made in the past is as bad, if not worse, than committing those mistakes in the first place. This is a travesty. It is a tragedy too. It is unjust. And as someone who respects and has lived his life and career respecting the rule of law, this is offensive, and it should end, and it should end now. Thank you very much.
When Judge Zhao Zilong asked Shifu to present his statement, Shifu stated that he would use his life to defend Taijuman and his disciples.
Shifu was only released during court sessions after being detained for a long time. A journalist asked, Shifu, what do you plan to do in the future? Shifu replied, I will continue to teach my disciples to cultivate their hearts and moral character as long as they do not leave.
Shifu later told us to treat this society and this country with sincerity, diligence, tolerance, and peace. I admire Shifu's immense love and compassion even more.
I'm very grateful for Shifu's and his wife's perseverance, since Shifu is doing the right thing.
Along the way, I heard Shifu's teachings and saw his examples. No matter how many difficulties and challenges Shifu faces, he always leads his disciples to overcome the obstacles one by one. Shifu and his disciples share one goal in mind. We will certainly protect this brightly lit home.
Taijuman has visited every populated continent, promoting the concept of love and peace through cultural exchanges. The fabricated Taijuman case should not have existed from the beginning, let alone the illegal taxation and illegal auctions. The case has dragged on for 25 years. This is a landmark case of human rights in the century, which is relevant to the development of Taiwan's democracy and rule of law. Taijuman Shifu and Dizi will always insist on upholding the truth and justice. Taiwan's commitment to transitional justice and human rights protection has been put to the test in this 25-year case of blood and tears. According to scholars and experts, the ratification of the Taijuman case is a litmus test for the government's transitional justice, as well as its implementation of human rights protection and freedom of thought and belief.
Thank you for watching.
Okay, it's such an incredible clip, and just as we mentioned, there are lots of families are affected by the case. So the parents are actually facing difficulties at work, and the children are experiencing bullying at school and are subjected to judgment while simply walking down the street by wearing their white uniforms. And actually, for the past 27 years, that the Taijuman, Dizi, and Zhang Meren noticed that it's not they are the only one that are waiting for justice. It's actually the victims and the people that are thereby bullied by the national power, state powers are actually waiting for justice as well. And that's also the reason why all the Taiji and experts and scholars around the world are keep fighting for this case, because we are actually protecting our sweet home. If we can uphold justice, there will be none of the citizens in Taiwan, citizens around the world will be victims again. And so I'm pleased to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Hans Newt, also the president of the Gunnar Newt Foundation of Freedom of Religion or Belief, an organization dedicated to enhance the UN Charter on Human Rights. He will give us a more insightful look on the background of Taiwan's Judicial Day, and by genuinely practicing judicial independence, Taiwan will enter a new future and possibilities, achieving a greater success globally. Let's welcome Mr. Hans.
On January 11th, 1943, the Republic of China witnessed a pivotal moment in its history, which Taiwan celebrates today as Judicial Day. This day, with the elimination of the privileges granted in China to citizens of the United States and the United Kingdom by the so-called Unequal Treaty, marked the foundation of a modern legal system and stands as a testament to its commitment to justice and the rule of law. As we commemorate this 81st anniversary of this significant event in 2024, it is imperative to reflect on the journey Taiwan has undertaken to shape its judicial landscape and the enduring values it upholds. During the course of the 19th and 20th century, China has signed several agreements with Western powers collectively known as the Unequal Treatment. They exempted citizens of certain Western countries from Chinese legal jurisdiction and created extraterritorial foreign settlements where Chinese law and powers of its judiciary did not apply. These agreements were imposed by military might and were extremely unpopular in China. Japanese propaganda used them in World War II to claim that Japan was liberating China from Western imperialism. The Treaty of January 11, 1943, was signed in Chongqing by the United States and Chiang Kai-shek to end the privileges of extraterritoriality and autonomous jurisdiction for American and British citizens, thus eliminating the main consequences of the unilateral treaty. Between 1945 and 1946, when the government of the Republic of China, the ROC, took control of Taiwan, the ROC's legal system was established in the island, and January 11, 1943 continued to be regarded as a day of historical significance. After Taiwan came under the jurisdiction of the Republic of China, its judiciary underwent reforms to align itself with the changing political landscape and societal needs. One of the significant milestones was the lifting of martial law in 1987, paving the way for a more democratic and transparent legal system. Subsequent amendments to the Constitution, the establishment of the Judicial Yuan, and the promulgation of the Code of Criminal Procedure and the Civil Procedure Code solidified Taiwan's commitment to the rule of law. Taiwan's Judicial Day symbolizes, therefore, a transition from an era of arbitrary rule to a system based on the principles of justice, equality, and the protection of individual rights. It is a day to celebrate the resilience of the Taiwanese people in their pursuit to a legal system that reflects their values and aspirations. Commemorating the Judicial Day provides an opportunity to also take stock of challenges faced by Taiwan's judicial system and the achievements it has garnered. Issues such as ensuring judicial independence, enhancing public trust, and addressing the needs of diverse communities remain ongoing endeavors. One case in point is the Taiji Men case, in which, as a byproduct of a criminal case that the Taiji Men won, with all its defendants declared innocent of all charges, the National Taxation Bureau, the NTB, illegally charged an organization that had not evaded any taxes with ill-founded tax bills. The NTB refused to back off even after the Supreme Court of Taiwan had spoken and confirmed that there had been no tax evasion. It is a case in which the Taijimen has been harassed, its property illegally impounded, with an attempt to sell it off at auction and then confiscated, in which the leaders and the members were interrogated and unlawfully detained and are now deprived of their sacred land after the government's seizure. One of the reasons why this happened is the system of bonuses given to tax bureaucrats when they, rightly or wrongly, manage to enforce tax bills. How can a government be trusted by the people if the tax officers receive bonuses based upon illegally collecting tax bills? Other elements of the challenges that need to be raised during the commemoration of Judicial Day concern the establishment of specialized courts, the introduction of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, and efforts to increase transparency. Taiwan's commitment to human rights is exemplified by its efforts to align domestic legislation with international standards. The inclusion of international human rights treaties into its domestic legislation and the establishment of the Control Yuan for oversight and accountability underscored Taiwan's dedication to protecting the fundamental rights of its citizens. Taiwan's judicial achievements have not gone unnoticed in the international stage. The island's commitment to the rule of law, human rights, and a fair legal system has led to increased collaboration with international organizations, legal scholars, and practitioners. All this contributes to the enrichment of Taiwan's legal landscape and fosters a broader understanding of justice in the global community. Yet, problems remain as demonstrated by the Taijimen case. As we commemorate Taiwan's Judicial Day on January 11, 2024, we reflect on the island's remarkable journey in establishing and fortifying a judicial system that upholds the principles of justice, equality, and the rule of law. From the foundation laid in the Republic of China in 1943 to the democratic developments of recent decades, Taiwan's judiciary stands as a beacon of progress and resilience. And as the system evolves even further, with more judicial independence, more ways of addressing the needs of diverse communities, which should include the Taijimen, establishing specialized courts, introducing alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, and efforts to increase transparency, this anniversary serves as a reminder of the enduring commitment to justice and the ongoing pursuit of a legal system that reflects the values and aspirations of the Taiwanese people. Solving the Taijimen case would prove and reinforce this commitment.
We thank Mr. Newt for the analysis of the Taijimen case and Taiwan's Judicial Day, which vividly highlights our quest for justice and disappointment with the government's action. It's a sobering reminder of the ongoing struggle for fairness and the protection of individual rights, even in a society that pride themselves on democratic values. So now we will have the director in charge of Better Winter magazine, Mr. Marco Respinti, who will further enlighten us on these critical issues, especially through the lens of the Taijimen case. Marco Respinti.
The English language has a beautiful expression, which is also full of meaning. It is unsung heroes. It is used when we wish to commemorate and celebrate people who have been at the center of an event, maybe even the real main actors, but who, for some reasons, have been overlooked and forgotten. It is a way to render justice to people who deserve it. The Taijimen case is a shame of our times. A pacific, law-abiding, and patriotic private group of citizens of one of the most advanced and democratic countries of the world has been wretched for more than a quarter of a century due to false accusations, which all levels of justice of that country have repeatedly proven to be simply non-existent. That country is one I happened to visit a few times and that I have learned to appreciate and love. It is the Republic of China, also known as Taiwan. The Taijiman case is a shame because no one deserves such a treatment when he or she has been proven innocent. Now, the Taijiman case can be also described as an unsung shame of our times. Of course, in this case, not because we wish to celebrate an ill treatment, but because the world seems to be content to live with such a blatant shame and still leave it unsolved. Moreover, Taijiman, Shifu, and Dizi are the unsung heroes of a totally pacific resistance to tyranny, which can also come hidden under democratic clothes, and of religious liberty. The Taijiman case involves, in fact, religious liberty. The persecutors of Taijiman tried to mask it under the guise of a tax evasion case, but all levels of Taiwanese justice proved that to be a gross falsification. It is chiefly, eminently, and simply a case of blatant violation of the right of innocent citizens to live in peace following their spiritual way. Political elections are now rapidly approaching in Taiwan. Elections are a high moment of the modern-day concept of democracy. Elections are the moment when people freely choose how they want to be governed, how they want laws to be made to render justice to their society, how they want the common good to be properly addressed. Elections are the time when rulers are judged for how they have ruled, and consequently confirmed or dismissed. Of course, elections are not the magical moment. Even in elections, the good and evil that are always combined in human beings reveal themselves. Democracy itself cannot count only on elections as a magical moment if there are no standards before and above elections. In fact, democracy is not in itself the panacea for every disease in human society. It must always work on the presumption of moral standards if we are to avoid the awful tyranny of opinions that is the contrary of the real common good of a society. Personally, I don't believe either in the somewhat common rhetoric that all rulers, all parties, and all ideologies are the same. If they were, it would simply be useless to vote. Instead, in modern-day democracy, voting can really be a means to improvement. Common rhetoric says that ideologies are dead, especially after the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. They are not. Ideologies are still there. They operate, for good or for bad, they govern, they propose different models of societies. Like democracy, ideologies must be judged on moral standards. It will thus become immediately clear that ideologies are not all the same. Some party will win the next Taiwanese elections, meaning that some other party will lose them. As a foreigner and an external observer, I wish Taiwan, the best, will win the elections. I always hope and pray for this in every country of the world when elections are in sight and at stake. In fact, if one suffers, all suffer. If one country of the world lives in injustice, we all live sadly. Anyway, whoever will win the Taiwanese elections, and I do hope it will be the best for the sake of Taiwan, that party, now the ruler, will have to face directly that unsung shame of modern times called the Taijiman case. The new ruler should immediately render justice to Taijiman Shifu and Dizi, the unsung heroes and the unsung victims of a dirty situation that the world cannot stand anymore. The party which will win the next election in Taiwan must put this shameful case to an end as the first thing it does. If the winning party, then in power, delays decision, it will be a bad sign for Taiwan's future. If the winning party, then in power, will not solve the case once and for all, it will prove that it was not the best party that won the elections.
Okay, well, we thank you very much, Mr. Respinti. So your perspective on the Taijimen case and its broader implication for Taiwan's democracy and the judicial system reminds us of the crucial need to reform and justice. Yes. And any thoughts from you, Eileen?
Yeah, I'm surely quite I'm quite affected by this opinion, because it has been the 16th election of president, and there are around 3 times of different parties have in charge of Taiwan's government. But I think we should all be aware of that. It's not election that will change the thing. It's actually the knowledge of people can actually change the situation. So I think that's also why that even it's only within 2 days of election that we're still holding this forum online. And I think that's what we should do beforehand and afterhand. Yeah.
Yes, truly. And I would even say that we would be guilty if we are ignorant,
exactly.
if we don't know much. So definitely we should educate ourselves and truly understand who you're choosing as president, because knowing which leader to choose, we should choose someone that puts citizens as priority rather than self-greed. Yes, that is so important. We shouldn't choose someone that's based on which party one supports, because after all, an election is it's not like a sports game where you choose which side you're on and which side you like a sports game, you know. It's not a sports game, but a matter of life and death in the future of a nation. So that's so important.
Yeah, they actually never has discussion about the pros and cons of election, because everyone has the right to vote, but do we have enough education or knowledge for every citizen to understand the power of government or how they works and how our rights are protected? So I really wish that this kind of situation would be changed within the years.
Yes, same. It's so important for nowadays, even nowadays generation, like the young people, to be aware, not only to look at one information from one media, but to gather information from different medias and really sort it out yourself and think through it. That's such an important thing.
Yeah, there should be rights of the citizenship.
Yeah, the freedom to think and to to choose. That's very important. And now we will have our next speaker who will be joining us here, Dr. Carolina Maria Kukolska, a researcher in esotericism and new religious movement. Dr. Maria will offer a unique perspective on the intersection of law, society, and minority spiritual groups. So, Dr. Maria.
On January 11, 2024, Taiwan celebrates its 81st Judicial Day. This commemorates the day in 1943 when the Republics of China judicial system achieved independence free from foreign jurisdiction. The independence of courts may, however, signify not only their autonomy from the influence of other countries, as was the case preceding the situation in the Republic of China in 1943. At times, courts become a significant element in the country's internal political games, which could pose a realistic threat to democracy. For the past 8 years in Poland, a populist party had been in power, utilizing transformations within the judiciary as one of its operational tools, allowing for control over various spheres. This has resulted in a public perception shift, where courts cease to be seen as independent entities and judges as impartial figures. Even within the Supreme Court, recent rulings have cast doubt upon the neutrality of verdicts. Instances occurred where, following unfavorable judgments for the ruling party, judges were dismissed, undoubtedly contributing to a decline in trust. The actions associated with the breach of the principles governing the functioning of the courts and the Constitutional Tribunal triggered a wave of protest across the entire country. And ultimately, this became one of the primary points of criticism, leading in the previous calendar year to a change of power in Poland through democratic elections. In 1996, significant events unfolded in Taiwan, reflecting the shadows of its authoritarian history, instances of crackdown on spiritual groups. These measures were essentially targeted persecutions directed at individuals who did not support the political party that secured Taiwan's initial direct presidential election victory. Some groups were branded as Shengjiao, accused of practicing black magic, and accounted suppressions. Despite exercising caution to avoid aligning with any political faction, Taijiman found itself embroiled in the crackdown. These authorities orchestrated a highly publicized affair involving both politics and media, conducting raids on the groups. Dr. Hong Tao-tse, the Grand Master of Taijiman, along with his wife and 2 disciples, were arrested during this period. In the case of Taijiman, the prosecutor preparing the prosecution adeptly and maliciously manipulated the media to construct a narrative that justified their unlawful repression. Numerous articles in Taiwanese media disseminated various unfounded accusations during this period. The Taijiman case made its way to Supreme Court when those accusing the movement suffered a loss. The Criminal Division of Taiwan's Supreme Court delivered the final ruling on July 13, 2007, exonerating all defendants associated with Taijiman, affirming their innocence regarding the charges, including the tax evasions. Dr. Hong and the fellow defendants previously detained were granted a compensation for their unjust imprisonment. Here we could focus on the positive aspect of the Taijiman case related to the day that celebrates the independence of the judiciary. Unfortunately, however, this wasn't the end of the unjust action against this group, even if no one committed a crime. Certain National Taxation Bureau bureaucrats chose to disregard the court decision. As a result, they continued and continue to this day their unjustified pursuit of tax evasion actions. Injustice and various forms of violence are issues that Taijiman has been grappling with for over 2 decades. This is unimaginable, especially in the context of the Supreme Court's verdict. One could say that while the court's ruling didn't fail in this instance, the entire system, which should guarantee that dispensed justice, failed. Every election is, in a sense, a celebration of democracy. For this reason, Taiwan commemorates a dual occasion this week, not only the Judicial Day, but also the presidential election, seen as a beacon of hope for fostering positive changes and steering the country to the right directions. The judicial system should guarantee justice. Respecting Supreme Court ruling is crucial for upholding the rule of law and maintaining the integrity of the judicial system. The division between court decisions on one side and the lack of proper adherence to them by another authority constitutes an important and challenging aspect of Taiwanese democracy. In the Taijiman case, fundamental human rights were violated. The existing law, or rather the lack of its enforcement, has led to the Taijiman case lingering for over a quarter of a century. The time has come for democracy to prevail, and for the discussed matter to finally be addressed in accordance with the law and the conscience. Therefore, I urge the winner of the presidential elections to take the Taijiman case into their hands and put the end to the suffering of innocent victims. Let justice prevail.
Yeah. We thank Dr. Maria. Thanks for highlighting the universal challenges in maintaining judicial fairness and democracy, and crucial reminder of the ongoing need for vigilance and reform in our legal system. Yes, it's crucial. And what better ways is there to learn from mistakes from history? There are many stories from the past that we can learn from. There are facts and stories that inspire us, and we should, all the history that's been through with us as humankind, we should implement it, if it's good, into our society. So now we are going to look into a story that talks about how judicial independence and these texts, how texts can be reformed so that it helps and supports a whole country and these whole country's citizen in fairness. So let's take a look at the story.
The English king's commitment to refrain from an excessive taxation led to the empire where the sun never sets. The factors influencing the rise and fall of a nation extend beyond the personal traits of its leaders. Indeed, the system plays a more critical role. As early as the 17th century, when monarchs in countries like Spain, Portugal, and France centralized power and imposed excessive taxes, the United Kingdom, in contrast, stood out. This was because the people demanded the monarch to sign the Bill of Rights, preventing the royal family from imposing excessive taxes. This historical move contributed to the UK becoming a global renowned nation where the sun never sets, serving as the best testament to the power of a just system. Born in the Netherlands, William III was a rare monarch with both literary and military prowess. Before ascending to the throne in England, he valiantly fought against the Anglo-French coalition during the Franco-Dutch War. Later, when he was welcomed back by the British people to assume the role of the English king, the Parliament, aiming to prevent a repeat of arbitrary taxation seen during the reign of Charles I, not only demanded his signature on the Bill of Rights, but also established a budget to limit royal expenditures. Under these limitations, William III could not impose taxes arbitrarily, exceed the budget, or divert state revenues for personal gain. He had to maintain government operations within the confines of limited taxation. Thus, William III's only option was to introduce stringent budget controls, along with financing mechanisms involving banking, stocks, bonds, currency, and other financial instruments borrowed from the Dutch system. This allowed the government to have sufficient funds at its disposal. Coupled with his firm stance against corruption, he successfully established an efficient and honest government. During this time, other major powers like Spain, Portugal, and France operated without parliamentary oversights. They not only imposed taxes on their people continuously due to warfare, but also witnessed collusion between the royal families and the Roman Catholic Church. They championed the divine rights of kings, determining official positions based on bloodline rather than moral character or professional competence. This led to a culture of corruption, where funds ended up in pockets of corrupt officials. When the government could not collect taxes, it resulted in desperate borrowing, resulting in inflation and currency devaluation. As a consequence, people on the continent sought ways to transfer their money to England. The oppressive methods of the Spanish government included setting up checkpoints not authorized by the government, prohibiting South American immigrants from engaging in independent trade. People were not allowed to cultivate food crops to sustain themselves, but were compelled to grow economic crops like tobacco and sugarcane needed by Europe. Adding to the injustice, heavy taxes were imposed at the port through customs. As a result, a massive corruption network formed, consisting of the royal family, officials, and the church. Similar to the Bourbon monarchy-led France, this eventually led to a revolution overthrowing the corrupt rule. In contrast, England became the renowned nation where the sun never sets. Human rights will not fall from the sky. A system that benefits the nation and the people needs to be pursued by the people themselves. The cycle of goodness will then be passed down to future generations.
Yes, the history. We should always learn from history and never repeat the mistake. And when I believe that when the Taijiman case can be solved, it will also be part of a history where it will be served as a case study for countries where they also are facing tax problems or even government law problems. Yes, it will serve as history to learn and to be better, because after all, we should be progressing, moving forward, being better and better every single day, and never going backwards. So what do you think, Eileen?
Well, just like as we mentioned about the election, well, we thought we were fighting for the ideals of democracy, but my experience after around 4 to 5 years, when I involved tax and legal reform, I actually understand that when it involves people, the system, the law is actually really important. And just like the video mentioned, what we actually know about the French Revolution, that it's how people thought the queen is to spend too much money. But what actually people don't know is it's because all the spend of the royal family are open to the public. So that's why the revolution appears. And I think what Taijiman and all the scholars and the people who knows it are fighting for justice, it's because I think it's based on love. Because if we actually do actions beforehand, there will be no such loss. Actually, people will die from the revolution or wars or fights. There are so many people die in the French Revolution. And so I think what we should learn from history is that you don't learn from history. So every citizens and people are really important who knows the truth need to stand up, because we can really learn from that. Yeah, so I think that's why I learned from the history and the story.
Yeah, I believe it. It'll be wise if we stop repeating history. We've been repeating history for so many thousands of years.
Yeah.
Why just can't human learn to be good? Learn from the good in the good way. Yeah, that's quite annoying.
It's hard actually. Yeah, because the bonus system in Taiwan actually will revoke the evilness of people. So I think that's why we always need to tell them to stop the system. Yeah.
Yeah, coming back from Canada, I just came back from Canada last year, and seeing all these happening in Taiwan.
It's incredible, right?
Yes, it's unbelievable, because Taiwan, President Tsai, right, Tsai Ing-wen, she have been telling the media and the whole world that Taiwan is a democratic country, how good it is, and which Taiwan is good in many ways, but there are so many internal problems that Taiwan is hiding from the world. There are a mass amount of ugly side that needs to be solved right away. They are the main problems that's pulling Taiwan back, and especially also with corruption that's going on. So that's very important. That's something that I hope that the new Taiwanese president can address on right away, immediately. Yes.
Yeah, we have spent too many years, and for 25 years has been through, and we all see. I think my personal thing, because I've been native, living here for over 25 years, I have seen we have losing our strength actually, because the non-independency of laws and taxation. Because if one taxpayers have lost their company, that means all the employees are gone actually. So it means a lot for the youth and also for the next generation as well. So I think we need to stop immediately.
Yeah, like I heard about the bonus money system. That's supposed to be for a company, you know, like in Canada or in Europe. There's no bonus system in a civil workers government system, right? Because it will only make people want to compete. The different departments compete with each other,
Exactly.
Giving out more fines to the people. But the irony is that the people are the taxpayer. They are the salary payers to the ones that's working in the government, and
the
the
officials,
people, the officials are using that power and that money to bully these citizens. That's
it's insane. Nothing happened like this in every corner of the world. It happens in Taiwan actually. Yeah, I think it's similar to like AI. You know, it's not the evil. It's not the system or the AI. It's actually people. So you should stop the system, because whether it's different party who become president or leader, if you couldn't change the system, they will always become evil because of the bonus of the reason. So I think, that's why we should talk about the elections. Yeah,
I believe there must be something that's hiding from us all. That's why they're not getting rid of the bonus system, right? They must be benefiting.
You don't know where the money goes.
Yeah, all these officials, these greedy officials that's benefiting from them. It must be immense. Yeah, that's why.
So before they actually spend too much money and they open up to the public, if there's too much, then the public will go insane. So we should know the truth before it's too late. You understand my point?
Yeah. I wish like all Taiwanese to gather up, you know, like, because there's only like tax reform groups, NGOs that's working on this, just only a fair amount. But I wish that all Taiwanese people can know this.
Yes.
And we need everyone to stand out. And then if we can, you know, stop paying tax to these wrongful doings, and hopefully it will awaken the government, right?
Yeah, maybe someday we should urge for the transparency in those systems.
Yes. So as we draw our webinar to a close, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the distinguished scholars, speakers, and participants. Today we have journeyed through perspectives from history, historical depths of Taiwanese judicial independence, to also deeply narrative Taijimen cases, and also reviewed history. So it's challenging. It's challenging us to reflect on the broader implication for societies striving for fairness and equity. And I urge everyone, all Taiwanese citizens, remember to choose the leader who puts its citizens as priority rather than self-greed. And don't be swayed easily by which party you've been supporting. Seeing this again, this is not a sports game, but a matter of life and death. So many victims has fallen into the bonus system trap. Yeah, and this is the future of the nation. So now we will end this webinar with a video of love.
多多经典为我们献上真心。 环环相扣，为我们缘定今生。这一切都是为了爱，让心中的爱灌溉稀罕交融的大地，散发出爱的芬芳，让心中的爱温暖血泪交织的生命，燃烧出爱的光芒。
回想当时这首歌的背景呢，
Remembering the memory of this song, it should be in the year when the Taiji Men 1219 incident happened. At the time, Taiwan had several major social criminal cases, and the so-called religious purge was in full swing. All major religious groups in the country were targeted, and Taiji Men was also subjected to unjust disasters. During this movement, Ho Quan-jen, the prosecutor who broke the law and abused his power, arrested and prosecuted Taiji Men Shifu for no reason. When Shifu was imprisoned, Taiji Men Dizzy began manually weaving heart lotuses, with a total of 16,666 weavings completed.
During that turbulent time, my heart was filled with resentment and injustice. Why would our country be so cruel to us? We did nothing wrong, and the incident caused so much unwanted misunderstanding among our relatives. I believe I have been completely let down by this country, but, after this song was made, it became clear that the thing Shifu taught us was hidden in my heart, and it was love.
Even though the criminal case was acquitted and stated tax-free, the tax bill was not settled as a result of the criminal case, as the Deputy Minister of Finance promised. Even in 2010, the National Taxation Bureau and the Administrative Enforcement Agency worked together and attempted to auction off our properties. For the first time, we stood on Katagalan Boulevard, making the Taiji Men case public and officially exposing the dark side of law and taxation. We used the pain we felt along the way to bring awareness to more tax victims who could only suffer alone. We also drew the attention of more experts and scholars to research and speak out about the institutional aspects of the legal tax system and the lack of practical operations. As a result, the Taiji Men case has earned the name Law and Tax Mirror. We have begun by defending our homeland and moving down the path of defending democracy and the rule of law.
Through this journey, I have learned from our Shifu that we should love not only ourselves, but also all the people around us.
I have learned to follow my conscience and insist doing the right things.
I've learned to become braver and stronger with bigger love.
Taiji Men is determined to be brave for love.
We are really fortunate to have such a brilliant master.
Have you ever seen an angel of love looking at you with a shining smile of kindness?
从86年3月
When the Chinese version of the song Love was announced in March 1997, Shifu's commitment to overseas promotion always looked forward. Shifu hence asked to sing the song in English. The Chinese version showed the sincere and genuine love from Dizzy to Shifu. To love Shifu is to spread Shifu's love to humanity. The English version further expanded the scale of love and showed the love for the world. The song demonstrated our action of promoting love of the world. The English version of Love has gone beyond the scale of that of Chinese version, showing the selfless love to all beings.
Shifu continues to lead Dizzy to promote love and peace across the world. He always teaches us to do things that benefit all beings. Shifu teaches us to be grateful every day and to pray and bless all souls. Shifu reminds us not to underestimate our thought of goodness, no matter how small it may be. Shifu enlightens our good thoughts and intention to help the world become a more peaceful place. Thank you, Shifu.